At our hearing last Thursday, I said that all roads back to work and back to school run through testing, and that what our country has done so far on testing is impressive, but not nearly enough. Our governor, Bill Lee, is also testing every prisoner, every resident and staff member in a nursing home. He's offered weekend drive-through testing. He's done specific outreach for testing to low-income communities. A Tennessean can get a free test at the local public health department. The governor's slogan is, if in doubt, get a test. Governor Lee sent his testing goals in May to the federal government, as every state has done. The federal government is helping him make sure that he has enough supplies in case he has trouble getting them through the labs and the other commercial sources. Last week, I talked with UT Knoxville Chancellor Don D. Plowman about that. We said, what would persuade those 31,000 students, as well as the 50 million K through 12 students in the country and the other 5,000 university students, what will persuade them to go back to campus? For example, the FDA authorized last week its first diagnostic test using saliva that a person provides at home instead of a nose swab or blood. It authorized its first antigen test. We're hearing a lot about those, like the ones used for flu or strep throat, which involves the swabbing of a nose, and you can get the result in just a few minutes. Another proposal, not yet approved, is to put in your mouth a sort of lollipop sponge. Take a photo of that with your cell phone and send that to your doctor. If it lights up, you're positive. Or the university might send that saliva lollipop to a nearby laboratory, which could be a gene sequencing laboratory, which can deal with thousands of those samples overnight. That same process could occur at a middle school. It could occur at a factory. Of course, anyone testing negative one day can test positive the next, but such widespread screening of entire campuses, schools, or places of work will help identify those who are sick, trace down those who are exposed. That in turn should help persuade the rest of us to go back to school and back to work. In addition to more testing, I expect Dr. FAUCI talk to us about additional treatments that will be available to reduce the risk of death, and the administration's plan to do something that our country's never done before, which is to start manufacturing a vaccine before it actually has been proven to work, in order to speed up the result in case it does work. Those vaccines, those treatments are the ultimate solution. But until we have them, all roads back to work and school go through testing. The more tests we conduct, the better we can identify those who are sick and exposed, and we can quarantine the sick and exposed instead of trying to quarantine the whole country. Just 3 months ago, this country was preoccupied with impeaching a president. Now that seems like ancient Roman history. Now, while this crisis has our full attention, I believe we should put into law this year whatever improvements need to be made to be well prepared for the next pandemic. Staying at home indefinitely is not the solution to this pandemic. There's not enough money available to help all those hurt by a closed economy. All roads back to work, back to school, lead through testing, tracking, isolation, treatment, and vaccines. This requires widespread testing. Millions more tests, created mostly by new technologies, to identify those who are sick and who've been exposed so they can be quarantined, and by containing the disease in this way, give the rest of America enough confidence to go back to work and school. For the near term, help make sure those 31,000 UT students and faculty members show up in August. We need widespread testing. Millions more tests, created mostly by new technologies, to identify those who are sick, who have been exposed, so they can be quarantined. By containing the disease in this way, give the rest of America enough confidence to go back to work and back to school.
Families across the country are counting on us for the truth about the COVID-19 pandemic, especially since it is clear they will not get it from President Trump. Truth is essential, so people have the facts, so they can make decisions for themselves and their families and their communities. Lives are at stake, president isn't telling the truth, we must, and our witnesses must, and we're counting on you today. One thing that's abundantly clear, we need dramatically more testing. It is unacceptable we still don't have a national strategic plan to make sure testing is free, fast, and everywhere. That is why I fought to make sure our last COVID-19 package included an initial $25 billion testing fund and a requirement that the administration submit a plan by May 24th and makes clear to states and tribes and employers and the American people what they can expect and what the administration will do to keep Americans safe. But testing alone won't be enough to reopen our country. We still need far more. And just as importantly, we can't expect people to go back to work or to restaurants or to confidently send their kids to school if there isn't clear, detailed guidance about how to do that safely. Schools, from early childhood through college, need to know how to keep their students, their staff, and their educators safe. When should they wear masks? How do you run a school cafeteria or a school bus? We need to make sure that industries across the country know how to safely reopen and that people know their workplace is safe. And just as we need a plan before we can start to reopen, we also need a plan well before we have a safe and effective vaccine to guarantee that we can quickly produce and distribute it on a global scale and make it free and available for everyone.
Well, let me also say that I think we understand that facts are terribly important. Dr. Fauci, let me ask you this. In the terrible pandemic of 1918, the virus exploded in the fall. It came back with a vengeance. Are we fearful that if we don't get our act together, as bad as the situation is now, it could become worse in the fall or winter?
And I think that possibility does exist. And even if we get better control over the summer months, it is likely that there will be virus somewhere on this planet that will eventually get back to us.
Yes, we've heard a lot of discussion about vaccines. Obviously, everybody in Congress and in this country wants a vaccine. We want it as quickly as possible, as effective as possible.
Let me ask you, Dr. Fauci, because you've been in the task force and at a majority of the press conferences, has anybody in this administration ever asked you or any member to take the foot off the gas of trying to find a cure or any type of countermeasure?
No, Senator, not at all. As a matter of fact, we at NIH, as you know, have been right from the very beginning, put our foot right on that accelerator in every aspect, including the development of vaccines and therapeutics. And as I described in my opening statement, we actually started that in January, literally days after the virus was known and its sequence was published. So no, I have never been told by anyone to pull back on the development of any countermeasure or any basic and clinical research project that we've been involved in.
Dr. Fauci, let me come back to you. This is one of the fastest development timelines we've ever seen for vaccines. And the American people and hopefully people around the world will be the beneficiary of what you find and the eventual licensure of that product. What are the biggest unknowns with this particular virus that can affect the development process? And Dr. Hahn, if you've got anything to add after that to this, please do. Dr. Fauci.
Yeah, thank you very much, Senator Burr. Well, there are a couple of things that I think are inherent in all vaccine development. First of all, there's no guarantee that the vaccine is actually going to be effective. As you well know, because we've discussed this many times in the past, that you can have everything you think that's in place and you don't induce the kind of immune response that turns out to be protective and durably protective. So one, the big unknown is it will be effective. Given the way the body responds to viruses of this type, I'm cautiously optimistic that we will, with one of the candidates, get an efficacy signal. The other thing that's an unknown, that's of concern, but we'll be able to get around that by doing the tests properly, is that do you get an enhancement effect? Namely, there have been a number of vaccines, two in particular, dengue and respiratory syncytial virus. When the vaccine induces a suboptimal response, and when a person gets exposed, they actually have an enhanced pathogenesis of the disease, which is always worrisome. So we want to make sure that that doesn't happen. Those are the two major unknowns. Putting all those things together, Senator Burr, I still feel cautiously optimistic that we will have a candidate that will give some degree of efficacy, hopefully a percentage enough that will induce the kind of herd immunity that would give a protection to the population at home.